Hey there folks, Pliskin by 51mm, and today I'm going to be doing a disassembly video on my M1A loaded, because the first one I did with the M1A, I for one didn't have a camera stand, and I was not able to get very good detailed images and views of taking the M1A apart. So I figured I'd redo the video with a better quality stand, and I'll also be doing it because the first time I did my M1A disassembly video, it was just iron sights only. Still, I didn't have the scope, and putting the scope on the M1A greatly changed the way you have to take it apart and maintain it and disassemble it, because you've got to be mindful of this scope up here, because you don't want to naturally you don't want to beat and thump your rifle scope regardless of whatever rifle it's on while taking it apart. So there won't be no setting it down on top of a table upside down or none of that, or beating and thumping on it, because you could kind of get away with flipping it over and setting the rear end on a sandbag and stuff when it was still just iron sights only, because this iron sight, it didn't hurt it none. If you just set it back here on the heel of the receiver on a sandbag, you weren't hurting nothing there. But that scope introduced a whole new way of having to take care of it. So I'll be showing you all the ways I disassemble the M1A. So let's get started. Alright, I've got the M1A in my lap. And, over the years, after I put the scope on the top of the receiver, mounted the scope to the rifle, and scope mount, because see, in the old days I could turn it over on a table with just a sandbag, pressed up against the back of the receiver here, and that would support the rifle, and I could take the trigger group out and disassemble it like that. But with that scope being in the way, that came to be a whole new problem, because you can't set it down on a table like this anymore. I'm orienting it so you guys can see, because that scope, you'd be resting your rifle on your scope, and that's a no-no. And I don't care what rifle it is, whether it's an AR-15, an AK, an M1A, I have a personal pet peeve that you don't let nothing ride on that scope, because if you're riding on that scope, you could knock it off zero or potentially damage it, and you don't want to do that. So, first thing you do, see, I've got it like this because I can get a hold of it, and there's no chance of it falling off a table if I had it in a crib, and there's no chance of it rolling off a table or landing on the scope or bending something. So first thing you do is you check the gun, so y'all can see there. Yeah, right there. The camera's set at an angle from me. There's nothing in the gun. You take the magazine out and set the magazine over here and let your bolt go home. Take your left hand, put it under here like so that way this doesn't drop out when you release the trigger guard. Now with my trigger guard on my M1A, I've got to use something to help me get it out, because it's still really tight. The tension's still really tight and good, which is a good thing when it comes to the M1A. You don't want this being loose to where you could just pull it out all willy-nilly. At least that's what I've read, because that says that you've taken it apart too much, and then you could start losing accuracy and your stock tension's messed up. But anywho, I use a screwdriver, take the trigger group, so you get a hold of it, and like so, I pop it. So you get it turned around here, and that is your trigger group for your M1A. Yep. Now you just have the receiver, barreled action, and stock. You flip the rifle back around. This is how I do it. Again, you lift it out like so back here, and remove the action and receiver away from the stock. Set it like so right there. Got your stock, and you set your stock over to the side. Let me lay this receiver down like so, like that. And then you take your stock, set it to the side. You don't need it right now. Alright, I'll continue on to the next process. Now this next process, I can do it in my lap too. And sometimes I do because it's a lot easier, but I'm going to try and do it on the table so you guys can all see. Alright, the next step is getting your spring guide and spring out of the gun. Now again, what I do, because it's got the scope and stuff and all that, is I've had to kind of change my way of how I take the spring and spring guide out. So what I do is I kind of press myself up against the end of the barrel and pull this back to relieve tension, and I take my fingernail and pull that roll pin out and let that spring guide and spring go. There we go. My camera lost focus there. And take that out. Easy peasy lemon squeezy on that too. And you separate these two and set them to the side. Alright, I had to change my camera view because this next part I want to emphasize a lot really well. Let's see if I can get the camera closer. There we go. There we go, that's perfect. Alright, I moved the camera closer so you guys can see better. This next part of taking the M1A down is what goofs a lot of people up and stumps a lot of people, and I will admit I was stumped on it pretty much for a good couple months until Mac Daddy 1911A1 showed me, or told me, a good way to do it. Line the rear end of your charging handle up with that notch just underneath the windage knob there, and you take it. Now it depends on the M1A. Some people can grab it and twist it like back this way and it'll come unlocked from the bolt's roller. Other people like me who had a new M1A when I first got it, it can be really stiff. So what you do is you grab a hold of your bolt charging handle there, and you take your index finger and you place it under here, and then twist it around a little bit until you hear it pop. There it goes. And that is how you remove your charging handle and op rod from the M1A. The bolt can be tricky too. You just grab it by the roller here, pull it out at midway into the receiver, and then pull it toward you and up. And keep doing that until it comes completely out like so. And there you have taken out the bolt to your M1A. Alright, now I have fully disassembled my M1A. The basic field strip disassembly. As you can see, this is the totality of the basic field strip. Now you can field strip the M1A down further if you wanted, although it's not really recommended unless you just want to like change a barrel or you know, just take it apart and put a new barrel on it or something. But you can take the flash hider off by unscrewing this castle nut here. You can take the gas system off by unscrewing the gas plug and backing it out by unscrewing this lock right here, and that would come off. Then you can, I think you knock that pin out there and this can unscrew. I'm not sure, I'm not too familiar with how that comes off, and then the barrel just unscrews from the receiver. And you could do that, but you really don't need to unless you need to do something that involves like switching out a barrel or something. So that's really not a necessary process. Alright, let's reassemble it, and I'll show you how I reassemble the M1A.